Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a nuptial Charles Coulombe.
Indeed I am. I'm as nuptial as they come. I've just come from a wedding reception to which I must go back when the show is finished.
Yeah.
And I've been a best man 16 times, which shows you I really am nuptial.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't get more nuptial than me. And I've been a groomsman. I've never been a maid of honor.
Well, give it time.
I've never been a flower girl either.
Well, we live in a time where people are asked to be godparents when there's no weddings. So
well, there's no baptism, so why not be a best man for a non-wedding? I'm a best man for my shack-ups.
Yeah, so
I think that fits.
All right, so this is going to be straight to business because we don't want to get in the way between Charles and his party, right?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to get between me and the party. But I must say, this has been an exciting time in the United Snakes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh.
And for all my Confederate fans, secessionists and so forth, who were overwrought by the destruction of Confederate statues and this sort of thing, forget it. Don't be upset anymore. Secession is back.
Wait, what? Why?
The Northwest will rise again. That's right, my friends. In Seattle, Washington, that state named after George Washington, whose figure astride a horse appeared on the Confederate seal. That's right, Washington on a horse. They have raised the starry battle flag once more over Washington. The South has risen again in the Northwest. And however much they may tear down statues of Jefferson Davis in Richmond, they are building anew the Confederacy in Seattle. And so I want to urge and advocate all my diehard Southern friends. You know who you are, League of the South, Neo-Confederates, all adherents of the lost cause. Go to join the Starry Banner in Seattle. What? You're looking you're looking a little, I don't know, incredulous.
Well, it's a new country already.
That's what I'm saying. The Confederate States of America are back. Why, there ain't no President Lincoln to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1809. No, sir. No, this time secession will triumph. What?
Well, it has. It's got the media's backing. It's got, I guess...
That's right. And we know that all them people that is backing this new free and independent republic in our Northwest are themselves true neo-Confederates. It's finally happened, ladies and gentlemen. All them people running around burning stuff and looting, they're doing it for the South. They're doing it for the Confederacy. They are doing it for segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. What?
Gosh, that's sick. I mean, you just...
What's sick? I'm telling you what they're for.
You're saying it in a sadistic way because you know that's literally the worst thing that they ever would want to hear about their movement.
What, that they're segregationists? But they are. They are segregationists. I'm just offering support. You know what? I feel so full of support for those folks. I am halfway thinking of taking off the Union Jack on my lapel to honor the British nationality of the bridegroom at today's wedding, and running back to my room and putting on a battle flag lapel pin in honor of Seattle and their firm stand in favor of segregation. Now, mind you, I'm not in favor of segregation. I have a number of black godchildren and a lot of black friends, and I probably would not enjoy a return to segregation days. But you see, this isn't about me. This is about our brave boys in Seattle, whom, as you point out, the media is supporting. Yeah! And I hope they get what the South got in Reconstruction. What?
Okay.
What? I'm supporting them.
You're supporting him. All right, let's...
I'm for those guys. Show it to the man. Just like, I'll tell you what, when the rioters destroyed the CNN headquarters in Atlanta, I said, save your Confederate money, boys. The South shall rise again. And now you can take your Confederate money and spend it in Seattle.
All right. Well,
what?
That's great. Yeah, wonderful. All right, let's get to the
You sound very unimpressed. You know, the worst of it was what happened. Do you think Seattle's interesting? The situation in Spokane and Coeur d'Alene is wild.
You've told us this already, Charles. Yeah, they were coming in on a bus, and the people with guns said, no, go back to Seattle. Or Spokane.
And I guess Spokane. But no, this is good stuff. I know they want Mr. What's his name? The president, Mr. Trump. They want him to play the role of Abraham Lincoln and invoke the Insurrection Act. That's what he went to war with the South under, you know. He didn't declare war on the Confederacy. He invoked the Insurrection Act of 1809, which is why I was kind of giggling when General Matthias was saying that, or Mattis, or whatever his name is,
Mad
when
Dog?
he was, whatever, when he was whining about, the Trumpster is going against the Constitution. Well, to the degree that President Lincoln did, if he invokes the Insurrection Act.
I don't ever want to hear anyone say, oh, it's against the Constitution. Because you've got people saying, oh, some things in the First Amendment are more important than other things in the First Amendment.
Well, that's very true. Whatever I want is more important than what I don't want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just... The Constitution is dead, Charles. No one cares about the Constitution.
Hey, I'm one of the few remaining constitutional loyalists. I saw myself as a child. I saw the Schoolhouse Rock section on the Bill of Rights. So there.
Okay, well, I like Schoolhouse Rock. It's
See?
fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it gives you stuff that's really great if you were born 60 years ago. Like me.
Okay. All right, on to the questions. The first question is from Philip the Good of Burgundy.
Are you using the Ouija board or something? I warned you about that before. I remember when we started getting messages from Judge Crater. It was a little much. All right, what does the Duke want out of me? This is His Serene Highness the Duke of Burgundy, ladies and gentlemen. What would you like?
All right. Hello, Charles. I love your show, and it helps me so... Wait a minute. Okay. All right, let me gather myself. All right. Hello,
Now, remember,
Charles.
you're reading a ducal message.
I love your show, and it helped me solidify my conversion last year.
He's the Duke of Burgundy. What did he convert from? This is very strange.
I was wondering if you're familiar with the hobby of wargaming and painting historical miniatures. I am aware that the famous writer H.G. Wells was involved with this hobby. What is your opinion on it? Do you know anything about the history of it?
Sure I do. I grew up with it. My dad and my brother and me, when we were young, were big military miniature collectors, 54 millimeter, and we were big war gamers with the same. And my brother to this day has the huge collection that we and our father amassed. So many beautiful figures. And my dad, neither my brother nor me really ever got into it, but my dad was extraordinary in terms of painting them and so on. And we would have very long and very drawn-out war games. The Napoleonic Wars, World War I, World War II, the Medieval Ages.
How do you do that? Is that like Risk? Do you use dice? How does that work?
No, well, we used dice later. When we began, we used to take little tiny Lincoln logs, the small ones, and throw them at the opposite soldiers. But then we started doing board war gaming, so we picked up the whole dice thing.
Okay. So it's like Risk or something, where it's like, oh, my 2 units attack your 1 unit, and You each
Well,
roll the
yeah, but
dice, or
we had hand-to-hand combat, and we'd roll the dice over each hand-to-hand
huh?
combat. And of
Okay.
course, the winner won and the loser lost.
Okay.
And we spent hours, the three of us, doing that when I was a boy.
I didn't know that. You never said that. That's interesting.
No, nobody ever asked.
I didn't think you were into gaming of any sort.
Oh, I was into wargaming, sure. And not only that, but also the board war games, with the little cardboard squares representing different units and so on.
You ever hear of the
Avalon Hill.
game Diplomacy?
Yeah, and the game Risk. I've played those, but I'm talking about things. I mean, I played those. I'm talking about games like Waterloo and Gettysburg and Battle of France and so forth.
You ever play Diplomacy?
I have.
Did you backstab? Who were you? What country were you?
I don't remember. It was years ago.
That's a fun game because that's pure like diplomacy. I love that.
Of course, I was always honest and nice.
Yeah. No, I highly recommend. That's one of my favorite board games, actually. To anyone
Well,
interested, you've got 7 different countries in Europe, and it's got a board with territories, and you go, take turns, and you. So what do you have? You have England, France, Italy, Germany, Austria-Hungary,
in Russia
Russia, and don't forget Turkey.
and Turkey, yeah.
Cause that's very important because you get that Russian-Turkish alliance, and they just sweep across to the west.
I hate to tell you which country I was.
Now the highest skill cap in the game is Austria-Hungary because anybody could attack them, but if you were good at manipulating people, you could just branch out in all sides.
Yeah, and Austria-Hungary was what I played. My usual thing was to ally with France and Russia.
France and Russia. Okay, so you're allying with France against Italy. You're like,
Yeah,
we're gonna get them, and then with Russia, you're allying against Germany. Wow, that's okay. Germany or Turkey then?
yeah. Usually Turkey first, then Germany.
Yeah, well, that's important. You got to get Turkey off the board because you don't want them to just steamroll you. Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's also the fact that the Russians have a built-in desire. And of course, I never minded promising them the Straits. I mean, what the hell did I care? They have a whole Mediterranean. I don't care. My interest was basically gobbling up as much of Germany and Italy as I could, especially Germany.
That's what the best diplomacy players do. They offer somebody something that is good, but ultimately it will lose to what you gain yourself.
Yeah.
So.
If you're Austria and you get control of Italy and Germany, guess what?
So anyhow, strange plug, but it really, all you collegiates out there, who hang out, it's a 7-player game. Oh, you're gonna have the best time if you get diplomacy. Really, really fun. You're gonna remember it your whole life. All right. Questions from Daniel. He's got 2 questions. So he asked several episodes ago about Yugoslavia, and so he says, as a follow-up to my question about Yugoslavia's viability, what makes Austria-Hungary so much more viable of a state than Yugoslavia? As far as I'm aware, their ethnic makeup was quite diverse as well, and these days it is common for people, including fellow monarchists, to dismiss the dual monarchy as something that could never work. What makes Austria-Hungary different? Was it the higher majority of Catholics, the way the empire was administrated, or perhaps the quality of the monarchs themselves?
All 3 at once, actually. He's quite right. All those 3 together. And what's interesting is that even though the empire has been gone for 100 years, in the countries that were partly Austro-Hungarian and partly not, i.e. Serbia, Italy, Romania, Poland, Ukraine, Montenegro, there's still a big, big difference between the sections that were under the monarchy and the sections that were not. Typically, the voting patterns follow exactly almost the border of the old monarchy. In the Habsburg areas, there's a higher respect for government and a correspondingly lower level of corruption. And it was funny. I was mentioning this to a Slovak lady, and she was saying, "Oh, well, Slovakia is terribly corrupt." And I said, "Well, you say that, but you don't have anything to compare it to, because all of Slovakia was under the monarchy." Now, I said, think of southern Poland up to Krakow and the rest of the country.
Mm.
And she goes, "Okay, I see what you mean."
I see. Okay.
And similarly with Ukraine, the areas that were Austrian up until 1918 are very different from the rest of the country.
Hmm.
I would go so far as to say they probably still, to this day, have more in common with each other than they do with their corresponding national brethren.
Okay. Daniel's second question. Charles, I would like your opinion on the Mortara case and its long-term effects on the papacy in Europe. As I understand it, this was the straw that broke the camel's back with regards to Napoleon III's support of Rome. You once said in a previous episode about Pope Pius XI that certain actions taken by him, including condemning Action Française and essentially betraying the Cristeros, likely cost millions of souls because of the feelings of betrayal by Catholics. Is it fair, then, to say that when the papal authorities removed Edgardo Mortara from his family, and the Pope refused to later return him, the ensuing scandal cost many souls as well?
No, it's not. In fact, to tell you the truth, had he returned the kid, it would have caused a lot of scandals. Because
what exactly, can we start out with, what exactly happened here?
Oh, I prefer to talk about it without anyone knowing. All right, fine. So basically, Edgardo Mortara was a little Jewish baby who lived in his family home. He was in danger of death, seemingly, so his Catholic nanny baptized him. Well, of course, he's living in the Papal States, and once the child was baptized, he was Catholic. So he was taken from them because they would not raise him Catholic, obviously, being observant Jews to some degree. And there was a big fight over it. Now, that's not actually what caused Napoleon III to withdraw his support of the papacy. What caused Napoleon III to withdraw his support of the papacy was the Franco-Prussian War. And his declaring that he needed all the French troops at home in order to fight the Germans. It didn't work. He still lost and lost his throne. So he kind of wasted everyone's time, which was not uncommon for Napoleon III. At that time, the vast majority of Catholics, certainly in Italy, believed in the necessity of the church for salvation, which of course they no longer do. Hence, you're not getting the sacraments during the lockdown, because we know we don't need the sacraments. But in those days, they were ignorant, superstitious peasants and thought we did. The interesting thing is that Mortara himself, and I always think that in this kind of thing, it's probably nice to get the opinion of the person it actually concerns. As opposed to people living 2.5 centuries later or whatever, century later, and yapping about it. Mortara was grateful. He was very happy that he'd been raised Catholic. He became a priest and had a very good career, which he undoubtedly would not have done had he been left with the family. And because he believed in the necessity of baptism for salvation as well, he was really grateful he'd been baptized. But they were only superstitious peasants back then. Now we know everything because we're so smart and stuff.
Okay, so this is kind of a strange thing for us Americans to ponder. So
I know, because we're so brilliant and we know everything. That's why we do everything so good, because we're brilliant.
So the Pope, in your opinion, doesn't have any liability, and
You mean,
that was the right thing.
Blessed Pius the Ninth?
I mean, in terms of not returning, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of strange to take someone away from the family.
It's strange.
I mean, isn't that betraying the
we do that. Well, no, we do it constantly. Remember Child Protective Services?
Well, I thought you were in favor of the authority of the father.
But I am. But the society we live in isn't. And the society we live in believes in seizing children if the society we live in thinks they would be better off raised in our wonderful foster system. We don't mind doing it. We grab them right and left.
I agree. From our society's perspective, it's very hypocritical for them because
say
they
anything
do
about
it the same.
Mortara.
Yeah. So, but I'm asking your
Well,
opinion
then
because
I'd
you
ask you
have.
another question. Let me ask you another
Okay.
question. If you thought the child's physical welfare would be endangered, like if he stays with those parents, they're drug addicts, and they're very forgetful, and they're likely to put him in the microwave instead of the turkey, would you take the child from them if you felt that staying with the parents was a clear danger to his physical safety?
Okay, I see what you're doing there.
Well, no, don't see what I'm doing. Would you believe it? Would you agree with it?
If there is if it's clear that that is the case,
Yeah, I'm
I mean
saying
there
it's
there have
clear.
to be like an actual court probably and I mean you can't just be guilty. I
You
mean,
put whatever machinery you want, but it's proved to the satisfaction of you, the court, the National Enquirer, whoever you want, that the child is in physical danger to stay with that family.
sure. Then yeah.
Then yeah.
As long as it's not well, okay. For some reason, I
No,
got the
hold on.
impression that this was loosey goosey, sort of like, well, Nanny did it, and
It wasn't loosey goosey. The child was baptized, and the child would not be raised Catholic. Now, we know that back in the superstitious peasant days, before Vatican II, when everybody learned the reality and truth of stuff, kind of like the way we learned real morality in the 60s. Back in them days, it was believed that a baptized person who was not raised Catholic and died would be far worse off than an unbaptized person who died. A bad Catholic goes further in hell than a good heathen.
okay. Well, I'll play devil's advocate. So, doesn't this position
Most people do.
doesn't this position support vigilantism in terms of, well, okay, let's baptize everybody without consenting their parents because that's for
No,
the best.
no, and the very fact that this rarely happened in the papal states should tell you something right there. It was a very unusual case.
Well, why, if it's wrong in the singular scale, why would it be wrong in large scale?
Because
Excuse
the
me,
Pope's.
let me just say,
I'm telling you.
yeah, no, I just said it wrong. If it's right in the single scale, why would it be wrong in large scale?
Because at the end of the day, it would cause more problems than it would solve. One thing you find about church moral teaching, like for instance, the question of the tolerance of non-Catholic minorities, all right, in majority Catholic countries, the question of how to deal with them depended a great deal upon the particular situation. So, for instance, in Spain, under Isabella, where it was feared that the Jewish population would not only be attacked by the local Catholics, but might very well be in league with the Ottoman Turks who were looking to return to Spain after 800 years of being pushed out. Isabella, at the end of the day, decided the best thing to do was to send them to countries where they'd be welcome, and she did. But they were a relatively small minority. Now, what if you've got a very large minority of non-Christians, and not only that, this particular minority, whatever they be, have shown themselves to be loyal upholders of the state? That's a different story, because then to exile them or to give them undue pressure would be more trouble than it's worth. So you don't. Now, that sounds a lot like situation ethics, but it's rather more nuanced than that. Now, in the case of the Mortara boy, again, this was a very rare sort of case. It didn't happen often like that, but it did happen. And so, how do you deal with it? Well, of course, everybody jumped up and down about it at the time. Liberal opinion in Europe jumped up and down about it. But unfortunately, had the Pope done otherwise, in those days, most Catholics would have been outraged that a baptized child had been returned to Jewish parents. And, the Pope is actually the head of the Catholics. He's not the head of liberal opinion. It's just the way it is. I mean, you'll find that the Supreme Court rules for the United States. It doesn't rule for Chad or for Denmark.
Okay, how about, I mean,
And there's Mortara's own opinion to consider.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize he was only the person involved, and that his own interest in the case was minor since it was about him. It's more important to those of us living today, of course, because we're brilliant. But he was very, very happy with the way it turned out. I think at the end...
Did he continue to see his parents?
Yeah, he continued to see them.
Okay.
But, he, as an adult, but he was very happy with the way things turned out. And at the end of the day, I think we have to leave the final word on the Mortara case to Mortara himself.
I don't know. This whole thing is so weird because it's like he didn't have a mom then, too. But then, I don't know. It's such a strange place.
Well, you got to bear in mind that we're the strange people. You know how I know we're the strange people? I've observed us over the past few months.
Okay, next question is from Youssef. How was the Spanish caste system used in Latin America? Do you think it still has an effect today?
Well, basically, it was a several-fold issue. One is that the Spanish were very exact regarding racial mixture. So someone who was half white and half Indian was a mestizo. Someone who was half white and half black was a mulatto. If you were a quarter black, you were a quadroon. If you were an eighth black, you were octoroon. 16th, you were musty, and so it went.
Wow, I didn't know they were that racist.
It wasn't even a question of racist because they all had the same rights. It was a question of accounting. But that's why if you go to the Pobladores monument, if it's still there in downtown LA, it might have been destroyed as a sign of racist imperialist colonial oppression. But if the Pobladores monument honoring the first settlers of Los Angeles is still there, you will see that most of them had varying amounts of black blood. And that was the way they kept the thing. Well, does that have any effect today? Well, yeah, it does have some. It depends on where you go because Latin America is an extremely varied place. But in some places it still does. The other thing that was interesting about the Spanish control of the Americas was that effectively the dominions were divided in two. The República de Indias and the República de Españoles, which meant the Spanish Republic and the Indian Republic. What that meant was that the Indian areas had separate administration from the Spanish areas. In the Indian areas, they ran their own show. They were autonomous and under their own caciques. Whereas in the Spanish areas, which were primarily inhabited by pure Spaniards and by the mestizos, there they had Spanish-appointed governors and things like that. And then each town had its own cabildo, its city council and everything, its own mayor and everything like that. The interesting thing, too, about some of the higher Indian nobility was that a lot of them were assimilated into the Spanish nobility. And to this day in Spain, you have, with high ducal orders or marquesal orders, you've got descendants of the Aztec and Inca emperors. I mean, this would be like a descendant of Pontiac or Tecumseh being Lord Ohio in England.
Okay. That's interesting.
Well, see, they weren't democratic like the British colonies, so they could afford to do things like that. Okay. In democracies, you're very limited as to what you can actually do to accommodate other existences. But in a monarchy, you're not fettered by the same chains that freedom brings you. What? The chains that freedom brings you are chains you lovingly put on yourself. I say lockdown. Oh, sorry.
Well, maybe we need to control ourselves. Ever think of that? Maybe complete unfettered freedom.
Are you getting tired of lockdown?
Much.
If we needed true unfettered freedom, then the rioters and the looters would be practicing social distancing and disinfecting the cash registers of every shop they pilfered.
That would
It's
be quite a
true.
sight, disinfecting
Yeah.
the cash registers you pillage. Yeah.
Yeah. That would show a real care for public health. I'll bet you in the Confederate Republic of Seattle, they're maintaining social distancing.
Look, it's Chaz, Charles, not Confederate. I don't know what.
No, it's Charles. That stands for Confederate Headquarters A to Z.
Oh, it's Capitol Hill. What?
Autonomous Zone.
Autonomous Zone.
That's what they say. It really stands for Confederate Headquarters A to Z.
Okay, well, looks like you have the inside scoop on this one. So
I do. The South has risen again.
all right.
I'm telling you, all those guys, the League of the South, the Southern Partisan and all that, them boys got to move up to Seattle and join the fight.
All right. Another question from Youssef. What was it like for Catholics in communist Poland? How was the transition to capitalism?
The answer to the first question is not as much fun as you might think, as the martyred Father Jerzy Populewsko, whose name I've mispronounced, would answer. It was pretty bad. I mean, it wasn't as bad as some of the other countries, but it was bad. It was not good. The transition to capitalism was bumpy, the way it was everywhere else, because the problem you have is that you can have a lot of youthful idealists with all the right ideas, but governance is a skill like any other. And if you don't know it, and all of a sudden you have to do it, on-the-job training doesn't work very well. So there were a lot of difficulties. But, 30 years on, Poland is in much better shape than it was.
What is the history of communism in Poland? Like, when did communism invade Poland?
1945, with the Soviets.
Okay.
See, the Germans invaded Poland and the Soviets invaded Poland together in 1939.
Right. Yeah.
When they were deep, sweet buddies.
Gosh, that must imagine that you're getting raided by two evil peoples at the same time.
That's the story of Central Europe.
Gosh.
In fact, there was von Herwarth, who was a German diplomat, wrote his memoirs of the interwar years and the Second World War. And that was the title of his book, Between Two Evils.
Gives you perspective.
And it was pretty. What's that?
It gives you perspective. Like, our times are getting tougher, but you're between Stalin and Hitler, literally.
That was pretty tough. But then, and of course, the thing to remember is that when the Germans invaded the West, Denmark and Norway and the Netherlands and Belgium and France, the communists collaborated with the Germans. In those countries. And they did so up until the invasion of the Soviet Union. Then suddenly they became freedom fighters and resistance partisans. And they realized that freedom was the way to go and that Hitler was evil, whereas before he'd been a class friend. And I'll tell you something funny. When Hitler invaded Russia, Stalin felt hurt. He thought he and Hitler were friends.
Are you joking, or is this like a matter of historical account?
Matter of historical account. He was hurt. And the idea of that filthy, bloody-handed butcher being hurt, like Jimmy Carter when Leonid Brezhnev invaded Afghanistan. Leonid lied to me. Never forget that. The idea of Stalin being personally hurt. I thought Adolf and me were friends. The mind boggles. Hey, mass murderers have feelings too. Just because you're an evil tyrant from hell doesn't mean you don't have feelings and emotions. He was hurt. And you know what? You're cheapening Stalin's feelings right now. You have no sympathy for that man. This was a person who his heart was broken. He thought he had a friend, another mass murdering dictator like himself. I mean, come on, how many peers do you have when you're in that particular job
That's
description?
true. It must be lonely.
Of course it's lonely. It's very lonely. And he felt, here was a man who understands, who knows what I'm going through, who sees what I've got to put up with. and to be stabbed in the back by your only real friend.
Sad.
Squirt, squirt, squirt. I'm in tears. It's really awful.
Okay, so, all right, so communism invaded when the Russians invaded in World War II. So, did communism end when during the same time period, like late 80s?
Yeah, 89.
89, okay.
And of course, during that period, it's important to bear in mind that communism was very debilitating to all those countries. You have to understand that all the countries that lived under it were really horribly abused. The things it did to them were, even now, they're not recovered completely. It destroyed trust between people because you never knew who was working for the secret police. It destroyed the influence of religion amongst a lot of people and destroyed any idea of civic unity. It falsified history.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. But see, that's why it is that the formerly communist countries today are more resistant to the kind of pseudo or para-communism that we're dealing with ourselves now. Because they've been there. You know, they've seen the crap that we're drinking. And they don't want any sips. They've had it already, thanks very much. They don't need any more. But we're very stupid, you see. I mean, one of the things that impresses me about the inability of our government people, our mayors and our governors and so forth, and the inability of the churchmen to do anything about the current situation, is bearing in mind that they're the generation of 68. When they see mobs, they remember themselves, 53 years ago, and
That's
they identify.
True. I didn't make that connection because I'm not a boomer.
Well, I am, and I do.
Yeah.
And I can understand that oh, wow, man, the kids are all right. They're doing what we did. All these years, there have been these sticks in the mud who just want to have but these guys, they're like us. They were with the revolution.
That's true.
Shut up, Grandma.
Wow.
Of course it's true. You think I don't know my own? I sure do. I sure do. And so, of course, they're incapable of dealing with these people. If you'll pardon the vulgarity, it's their childhood fantasies, their teenage fantasies come to life. Yeah, man. Only now it's, yeah, man. Yeah, on the barricades. Mr. Mayor, they're burning and pillaging. I know, but the kids are all right.
All right.
No, Mr. Mayor, the kids are not all right, and neither are you. Because you know what? They're stupid now. You were when you were their age, and you are now. And as my late daddy used to say, you know what I'm going to tell you. All together, when you're stupid, bad things happen.
That would have been funny. That would have been a funny line if Jesus said that or something, because it's so. When you're stupid, bad things happen. It's an important saying.
It is. You get Chaz because you're the mayor of Seattle and you're a moron.
Gosh. All right.
There was a song in the 70s. Short people got no reason to live.
What?
Yeah, short people got no reason to. Short people got no reason to. Short people got no reason to live. So I think we could change short to dumb.
How could that be a song? Was that on the radio? Was that like a popular song?
Yeah. Don't take my word for it.
No. We'll take your word for it, Charles. We'll take your word for it.
No,
All right.
no. You are dissenting from my recall, but I am not My what do you call it? My recall is not incorrect. Randy Newman, short people. He says they got little hands and little eyes, and they walk around telling great big lies. They got little noses and tiny little teeth. They wear platform shoes on their nasty little feet. Yeah, that's Randy Newman, a man who told it like it was, or something.
Okay.
We could do dumb people instead of short people, if you prefer.
All right. That's, yeah.
Dumb people got that. Well, you get the
It's
idea.
more inclusive.
Well, yes, that's true, because dumb today encompasses almost all of our rulership in church and state.
Yeah.
I've got an idea. Let's defund the police in the face of riots, or abolish the police department. Yeah. Well, I've got an idea. Let's defund the mayors and city councils. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Think of all the money we'd save. No more salaries for them, no more pensions. Yeah, that'd be good.
You're degenerating into, what is it, anarcho-monarchy.
No, I'm not. I'm accepting people for what they are. I'm not projecting my views of what they should be onto them.
All right. Next question is from Brian.
Okay.
Charles, why did the Polish monarchy remain elective? The Holy Roman Empire was technically elective, but the Habsburgs managed to establish a dynasty. I see this as having been the main cause of Poland's weakness.
Well, you're right, it was. But you've got to bear in mind that it turned around. It went from being a dynastic monarchy till when the last family, the Jagiellon, I guess they were, died out in the male line. The Polish noble families were all too jealous of each other to accept any one of them becoming kings of Poland. So that's why it became an elective monarchy. And it did produce a couple of really good kings, like Jan Sobieski. But by and large, it didn't work very well. And that's why Poland went from being a huge country to being partitioned 3 times into nothingness. So, yeah. However, just so you'll know, the last Polish dynasty, while extinct in the male line, does in fact have living descendants in the female line. Want to guess who they were?
The
You can do it,
Habsburgs.
Steve.
The
Yes,
Habsburgs.
the Habsburgs. Of course, indeed, indeed. Let other countries war. You, oh happy Austria, marry.
Wow.
It's true.
No, it's absolutely true.
We got us an hereditary monarch waiting for Poland and Czechia and Austria and Hungary and Slovakia and Slovenia and Bosnia.
Wow. Okay. Next question is from Patrick. Dear Mr. Coulombe, when I read your book, Star Spangled Crown,
Not that it's a plug.
I was interested to see that your fictional king was celebrating Saint Nicholas II, the Passion Bearer, as the Orthodox call him. I'm a big fan of his, but am unsure as to how you envision his veneration as a saint by Catholics occurring. Could you touch on that, as well as the possibility that the Bolsheviks may have failed to end his bloodline?
Well, I could. Firstly, a couple of things you got to bear in mind. One is that there are a number of Orthodox saints, Russian Orthodox saints, that Russian Byzantine Catholics are allowed to venerate. Being primarily people, and this comes from Pius XII, being primarily people who had never opposed the Catholic Church, although they were Orthodox. I mean, this goes back to the weird status of the schism, which legally doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, its only legal foundation is the breaking of the Union of Florence in 1462 by Patriarch Gennadios II of Constantinople, who renewed former excommunications and incurred them as well. But he did so, number one, he did so at the insistence of the Sultan. So you have to wonder about the validity of an act of a patriarch who was chosen by a Muslim for that very purpose. And secondly, whatever you think of the validity of that act, those in 1964 by Paul VI and Athenagoras II. And that's the whole legal basis of the schism. So with that gone, one kind of wonders what it all means. What's it all about, Alfie? Secondly, in the world of Star Spangled Crown, you'll recall that Orthodoxy and Catholicism had managed to reunite, to go back into communion.
Yeah.
And it was my presupposition that in such a setup, it would be a very simple thing indeed for Nicholas II to be accepted as a saint.
Okay. That's kind of almost going into like this alternate world where you're hyperimposing a pope with qualities almost now.
Yeah, well, Star Spangled Crown is all the world I created. I don't know how to tell this, and so, especially since the riots have broken out, people are thinking it was terribly prophetic. But, I wish it were. I mean, the rioting part was easy to figure out. But I feel a little bit like Malachi Martin, in his novel, I think it was called Vatican. His villains were all drawn from life, but his hero he had to assemble from 3 different priests. Well, similarly, in my own Star Spangled Crown, I really had to work to come up with nice and happy answers to stuff. But the horrors, that was easy. No problem with that. I could pull them right off the front page. And as a result, the front page followed me.
Yeah. Right. Next question is from Robert. In Charles's opinion, was any revolution justified, or possibly did any achieve the goal of a more just society?
The only ones that I can think of that actually achieved that were the ones in Central Europe and Russia, 1989 to 1991. And the degree to which they were actual revolutions as opposed to just regime failure is something that's going to be discussed for a long time. I mean, at the end of the day, communism was able to survive as long as it did because it was able to provide the bare essentials of survival. And that was enough to keep the majority of people quiet, the way it normally is under any regime. It fell apart when it could no longer do even that.
Let's leverage this into China. Do you have any time frame about the sustainability of China?
No.
Like how long?
None at all. There's so many imponderables over there.
So you don't feel its time is drawing near?
It could be. The only thing I can say is I would not be surprised if China collapsed into civil war tomorrow. I would not be surprised. If it held together for the next 20 years, well, the next 10 years anyway, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, let's say China collapsed into civil war. What would other countries, what would they see their responsibility as being?
Well, firstly, the immediate economic results would be enormous. I suppose the United States and a lot of other debtor countries to China would renege on their debts immediately with the collapse of a regime.
And would everyone try to put their own friendly regime, like puppet regime, in? I mean, isn't that what we do?
Well, the problem is, would we be able to? I mean, as you've seen, we have our own problems right now. The United States is in a very, very strange place between Canada and Mexico. Anyway, point is that we are in a very strange place right now. We have what appears to be an attempted coup d'etat against the president. Mind you, some on the left would accuse him of it being a power play on his part. Who knows? The truth is that we're in uncharted waters domestically at the moment. I mean, I have literally not seen anything like this since I was a boy in the long hot summer of 1967, when all the major cities in the East went up in race riots. Mind you, San Francisco was enjoying the summer of love. And LA, having had its major race riot 2 years before, was just sort of sitting there having love-ins at Griffith Park and Elysian Park and kind of wondering what was going on. Well, LA does that. It's not very swift, but it feels things more than anyone else does. Like if there's a tidal wave in Thailand, we feel it more than the victims do. We do. Man, it's so terrible what's going on in Thailand. Do you actually know anybody there? No, but I've seen the TV, and oh my God, I feel so bad. Worse than the people there feel.
You have a problem with empathy?
Not in the slightest, especially when it's carefully performed for the cameras.
Oh, okay.
There's no, believe me, sincerity is never so deep as when it's done for others to admire.
Oh, I get it. All right. Okay, our last question for today is from Oscar.
Hello, Oscar.
I don't know if this is something that has only happened to me, but I've noticed, and I mean this in the most charitable way possible.
That's always a setup for a smack. All right, who's getting it?
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of like this question we had a long time ago, and I think the person prefaced the question with, "I don't mean to be mean, but would it kill trad women to put on some makeup every now and again?" Something like that. It was.
I always say, if you ever find yourself in a position where you feel that you yourself need to say to somebody, "I hope I'm not weirding you out, but
yeah,
trust me, it's already done.
Yeah,
that bus left the station." If you know it's going to weird them out, they already know it.
Yeah,
it's an accomplished fact.
Okay.
So, all right, how's this guy going to weird us out?
Why are a good deal of Protestants sticks in the mud, killjoys, or just plain boring? Would Mr. Coulombe like to explain this?
Sure. One word. Calvinism.
What does that mean?
Puritanism. Or which H.L. Mencken defined as the fear that someone somewhere might be enjoying themselves. It's Calvinism basically taught that, how do I put this nicely? Calvinism taught that we're all predestined to heaven or hell. We can't do anything about it. But God will shower earthly blessings on those whom he has preordained to heaven.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to feel like you're amongst the saved, that means you got to work real hard to get them their blessings. And so, what that meant was that things like the arts and, mere enjoyment were possibly of the devil, but certainly unhelpful in terms of getting wealth. The Puritan work ethic and so forth.
That's such a strange worldview, because God's showering you with good material things, but you can't enjoy those material things.
No. If you enjoyed them, then you're probably not a good person.
So, but I don't get the attraction of God showering worldly things on you. Then, like, what does it matter? You can't enjoy them anyway. I don't get it.
No, it matters because it proves to you and to your neighbors, especially, that you're amongst the saved.
It's just a showpiece. That's
pretty much.
It's a trophy.
Well, and self assurance. I mean, look, if I could give you proof that you were probably going to heaven, wouldn't you like that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Catholic, you've got to constantly wrestle with whether or not you're going to go to heaven or hell. And you're never really sure of which it's going to be. You have a hope of heaven. You work toward it. But you don't have that blessed assurance, Jesus is mine.
I have an assurance. I found ways.
Oh, very good. Well, that's because you're rich.
One of the I'm looking, and I can tell you right now, that there are, what is it, a dozen promises attached to the rosary, right? Mm-hmm. That are from Our Lady, and one of them is that devotion to the Holy Rosary is a sign of predestination to heaven.
It is, but you've got to maintain that devotion till you croak.
You have to maintain it?
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. That's the Woody Woodpecker song, for
Yeah,
those of you who are
I
wondering.
know Woody Woodpecker.
So,
Okay, well, we can try our best. No, I'm not going to degenerate into some lukewarm Catholic role play, but
lukewarm Catholic role play. Now, I'd like that as a bumper sticker. Lukewarm Catholic role play. I mean, I don't even know what it would be, and I'm just as happy.
We can try our best. We fall down sometimes and we don't say the rosary, but God knows our heart is good.
Let's hope. Now, I don't mean let's hope he knows. Let's hope our heart is good.
No,
The unfortunate thing is
trust. Let's trust.
We're not the best judges. I trust in God for everything. Myself, I'm not that really assured of.
You don't trust in his mercy?
I don't trust in my probity. I mean, I remember one of my dad's great sayings. He would take old sayings and twist them. And there's an old saying which goes, the only ones I trust are thee and me. And sometimes I wonder about thee. Mm-hmm. Well, my dad turned that into, the only ones I trust are thee and me. Sometimes I wonder about thee. But every now and then, I'm not really sure about me.
Mm. Okay.
And I actually think that that's the voice of sanity. Because if you're too sure of your own wonderfulness, you could become a demon.
Yeah.
Or you could declare independence at Chaz. The battle flag. Should I sing Dixie?
No, that's not allowed here.
But it's the anthem of Chaz, the Confederate headquarters A to Z.
I don't think so. I don't think they've realized their connection to the Confederate South.
Well, they will when all of the League of the South show up, and the Southern Partisans, and the Neo-Confederates, and all them guys, whom I have called upon to go to their new homeland. Forget the sunny South. Listen, they're toppling statues of Lee and Jackson and Davis all over the South. Forget it. Move to Seattle. That's the new Confederacy. I'm telling you, the South shall rise again, only in the Northwest.
Okay. All right.
Unless the Trumpster repeats Mr. Lincoln's thing and invokes the Insurrection Act of 1809.
Do you want him to do that?
Well, as a proud Confederate and an advocate of secession, I would be against that. I'm all for Chaz being allowed to negotiate its own foreign policy, pay for its own food. Oh, that. Support itself. I'm sure at this very moment they are laying the groundwork for their future industry by growing pot.
That is... I can't believe that. Oh, gosh. That's
all they got.
That's
what are they supposed to grow? Wheat?
You're actually correct, probably.
Well, what are they supposed to grow? Wheat? Grapes? It's bloody Seattle. You're not going to be growing grapes there. There's a reason we don't drink Chateau Seattle. There are wines in Washington, but they're all Columbia River Valley. You're not going to get them out of Seattle. Place is foggy.
Okay.
And they're probably not going to even be able to afford to open up a coffee shop.
No. Well, whatever.
They're going to be eating each other in Chaz.
God, you say that so nonchalantly.
Well, stop. You have a country that is an independent nation, free of these United States, that is 6 blocks in diameter. Other than growing pot, what can they do?
How about let's take this in a different direction? I think Chaz is inherently an argument against monarchy because they elected a monarch.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson said he used that word, a monarch. It's like the leader is a rapper or something.
Yeah, he's not a monarch. He's like a Führer or a Duce.
Well, how
or
is
President
he not like
for
a
life.
monarch?
Not hereditary, not crowned by the church.
You can be elective.
He's not crowned by the church.
So it's not a Catholic monarchy.
No, so I have no interest in it.
But it could still technically be a monarchy.
No more than North Korea.
Why is that?
Because the North Korean state does not, how do I put it, anchor itself in traditional Korean religiosity the way the Korean kingdom did.
So,
Quite the opposite.
Why does a monarchy have to anchor itself in tradition?
Because otherwise it's not a monarchy by definition. Because the monarch has to have legitimacy for his authority. And that legitimacy cannot be given by anything other than whatever that society sees to be as God. And I don't know. I don't know where Chaz gave their Duce authority, but I say, Viva il Duce, Sieg bloody Heil, Führer mine.
All right. So be it, Charles.
All right. And I'm just wondering about the border controls.
They do have border controls.
No, the other way.
Oh.
Entering the United States.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I wonder where the water supply is going to come from. It must have come from the United States and tainted white technology. Of course, it rains a lot, so maybe they'll put out pots. Wonder where their gas is going to come from. I mean, they could burn stuff, but in 6 blocks, probably the only thing they got to burn is furniture. So what are they going to do when they burn it all? And if they, whatever trees they may have, they burn that. I mean, that would be very bad on the environment. And, people in the Northwest are really keen on the environment, sort of ecotopia up there. I don't know. It seems tough, but I'm sure they'll find a way. And what with all of our friends coming to join them from all over the South, they'll have a large population. Sure hope they can feed them all.
Okay. Any closing remarks, Charles?
Oh, yeah. I've got a wedding to go to. To return to. But before I do, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything that the last few months have proved, that just as they were failures for the most part as parents, my generation have been failures as leaders in church and state. But if it makes you feel any better, we're not going to be around forever.
I don't like that thought.
We're not. Every generation has to go bye-bye. Mine does too.
Oh, I thought you meant like me, like my generation. Okay, your generation is.
You guys won't either. I mean, but you'll be around longer than we will.
Okay, that's
believe
acceptable
me,
then.
The death sentence in your case is delayed, not.
Yeah. Okay.
But in our case, it's much closer. So we got to screw things up as much as we can before we go off to Forest Lawn.
Yeah, the Disneyland of death.
The Disneyland of death, where we belong.
Okay.
And we're going to leave you an inheritance that, well, let's just say a lot of you will curse us forever for it.
Okay, that'll do it for this episode. Remember.
Yes.
Oh, what?
I was going to say, if it's Monday.
If it's Monday, it's off the menu.
Yeah, but wait a minute. What about the Soyuz save?
It may be your own.
Till next week, ladies and gentlemen, remember, if you're old, you're mold.